thank you all for joining us this evening. Today's forum was actually requested during our January forum by our colleagues from Trinidad. Thankfully, we have been able to coordinate with the Ministry of Natural Resources, the Center for Local Business Development, as well as the other parties that were requested to facilitate today's forum. And we thank you all for responding positively and committing to participate today. Our first speaker will be from the Guyana Geology and Mines Commission. However, we do have an assortment of speakers and the order will be as follows. So first, GGMC. Everyone who has joined the forum has the outline of what the presentations will be on prior to today's forum. The second speaker will be from the Center of Local Business Development, followed by the Local Content Registry, and then we will close with Legal by Stephen Roberts. So with that being said, I will now hand you over to Ms. Joanne Daniels, who is the Administrative Officer for the Guyana Geology and Mines Commission's Land Management Division. And Ms. Joanne Daniels does bring over 10 years of experience in the field working in that particular department. So we look forward to her informative presentation, and we also look forward to learning more about how land can be acquired compliantly via the commission. And I do know that some of our colleagues who were inquiring from Trinidad have already expressed an interest in this area. So do note that at the end of all of the presentations, we will be having a Q&R session. And we do encourage, if you do have any questions, if you're unable to write it down, feel free to leave it in the chat. And during the closing question and answers, I will be reading them out. And we'll also give persons the opportunity to speak. So with that being said, I will stop my share screen and I'll hand over to you, Joanne.
All right, thank you, Eureka. I'm gonna start sharing. Please let me know if you're seeing the screen.
Yes, I'm seeing it.
Yes?
Correct.
All right, as Eureka said, I'm Joanne Daniels presenting on behalf of Land Management Division. First, we're going to look at the outline, which I will start with the mission, the overview of the land management systems, the core tenure processes, who can apply for medium and large scale properties, the general requirements for medium and large scale applications, requirements for medium and large scale applications, application process, followed by the large and medium scale rental schedule, the incentives for medium and large scale investment, and the contact information. The Land Management Division mission is to facilitate growth and diversification in mining by providing accurate and timely information and maps, and efficiently licensing, permitting, and administering mineral properties, supported by IT applications and by highly skilled personnel. An overview of GGMC's land management systems. The Guyana Geology and Mines Commission is a statutory body responsible for the management of all mineral tenure in Guyana. Our approach to land management encompasses the GIS verification and the property administration. Tenure management falls under the purview of the Land Management Division, which oversees the following: acceptance, processing, and granting of medium-scale permits and large-scale licenses, maintenance of an up-to-date mineral license database, cartography services, administration of auctions and lotteries, processing and endorsements of all applications for tax exemptions subject to mineral tenure. The following are the core tenure processes of the Land Management Division. First, we have the prospecting permit medium scale, which is a mineral tenure for prospecting rights for specific minerals over an area of 150 to 1,200 acres in size. The cycle time for processing is 90 days, and the term of the license is for 1 year, but this can be renewed every year once rental is paid. The mining permit conversion is a conversion from the prospecting permit to a mining permit. So one you prospect, the next one you mine. And that is the same 150 to 1,200 acres. The processing time is less, which is 65 days. And the term of the license is for 5 years. Same can be renewed every 5 years. The mining permit for quarryable materials is for like sand and loam and rocks. Follow the same path as the mining permit. It takes 90 days to process, and it lasts for 5 years. It can be renewed as well for another 5 years upon request. The special mining permit medium scale is anything that is less, any mining permit that is less than 150 acres. It takes 95 days to process. And as well, 5 years the license lasts for and can be renewed upon request. The prospecting license is a larger tenure. As you can see, it can be up to 12,800 acres. It takes 200 days to process, and it can be granted for 1 to 3 years. Renewal can be done for 2 years renewal, one time every year. The mining license, same 500 to 12,800 acres, 150 days processing time, 20 years is the term of the license. Same can be renewed, but when this is renewed, 7 years on each renewal. Quarry license, same thing, 157 days, 15 years is the grant period, can be renewed every 5 years after the 15 years would have been expired. The permission for geological and physical survey, that's a large-scale license as well. 60 days is the processing time, and the grant period is 1 to 3 years. This cannot be renewed. I'll now move on to who can apply for medium-scale properties. An individual who is a citizen of Guyana, a partnership consisting of 2 or more citizens of Guyana, a companies whose entire share capital is beneficially owned by citizens of Guyana or by a corporation who has been established by or under a written law in operation in Guyana, or partly by such citizens and partly by such a corporation, a cooperative society registered under the Cooperative Societies Act, a public corporation, or any other corporate body established by or under any written law in force of Guyana. Any organization established by the government or by under any written law in force in Guyana and authorized to carry on mining operations. Okay, just give me a minute there. Sorry. So I'm being more specific now with the persons that can apply or organizations that can apply for specific processes. I'm going to look at the prospecting permits, prospecting license, sorry, and the permission for geological and geophysical survey together because they attract the same set of persons they can apply. So it's an individual, a company within the meaning of a Companies Act, a public corporation, a cooperative society registered under the Cooperative Societies Act, another corporate body incorporated in and outside Guyana, including a company established outside of Guyana. Any organization established by government or by or under written law in operation in Guyana and authorized to carry out mining operation. For the mining license, the holder of a prospecting license can hold a mining license, or any person who is not the holder of a prospecting license may, on the commission being satisfied on the data supply, apply for the grant of a mining license. For a quarry license, an individual who is a citizen of Guyana, a company within the meaning of the Companies Act, or any organization established by the government, whether incorporated or not. The general requirements for all medium scale application. First, you will need the completed prescribed form, and this can be accessed at the Land Management Division or the GGMC website. You must be 18 years or older. You must have a map and coordinate reference description of the area of interest, your proof of address, which can be in the various forms highlighted. A valid identification card, passport, and driver's license is accepted, and your tin certificate. In addition to the general requirements, the prospecting permit medium scale, you need, if you're applying for a prospecting permit medium scale, you will need a payment of an application fee of 4,000 Guyana dollars, payment of US 13 cents per acre. And if you're a company, the proof of beneficial or Guyanese must be submitted. Therefore, only Guyanese can be holders of a prospecting permit, medium scale, and a mining permit. However, if you're coming as a company, the shares issued must be 51% beneficially owned. The mining permit conversion is $2,000 for the application. You pay a first year rental of $1 per acre. And the same goes if you're a company coming, you must show 51% beneficially owned by Guyanese. That's the shares issued. The requirements for large scale processes for the mining license, you need $100 US. That's a non-refundable fee. You need a mine and a closure plan. For quarry license, it's the same fee, but you would need a quarry plan instead of the mine and the closure plan. You need proof of financial and technical capability, company incorporation, which is a tin certificate, copy of ID card, a tin certificate of all directors and shareholders, environmental permit. If the license will be granted, only then you will be able to submit the environmental permit, the environmental bond. Once published, once the license is going to be granted, the bond is going to be determined by the commissioner. Same is refundable. The permission for geological and geophysical surveys, the letter to the minister, you will have to submit a letter to the minister responsible for mines and minerals as the Minister of Natural Resources. You will need a work program, you need a proof of financial and technical capabilities, the fee structure, that's a proposed fee that you're willing to pay for the permission for geological and geophysical survey. And same, you will need your company documents as well. I'm going to now take you through the application process for the PPMS. First, you will need to submit your application to the Guyana Geology Mines Commission. The staff is going to check to see if all these requirements are fulfilled. If not, it will be rejected and you will need to come and resubmit. Once it's submitted, once it's accepted, you will need to pay at the cashier. Then the verification officer will verify to see if the area is available. If the area is unavailable, then for the PPMS, you will be refunded the down payment that you made, the 13 cents, you will be refunded that fee. If it's available, then it will go to publication. After publication, the applicant will pay the difference in rental. The permit will be prepared, signed by the manager and the commissioner, and then it's going to be issued. The mining permit follow the same path. The only thing is that you will need to pay your environmental bond. This is the extra fee that is attached to the mining permit, but it follows the same process. For the prospecting license, it's a bit different because after the verification of the area once granted, it will have to go to a board for decision making. Once the board is satisfied, the minister is going to be notified. Once he approves, the license is going to be granted. For the minor license, it follows the same format. And for the PGGS as well. For the large scale and medium scale rental schedule, we have the mining permit and the quarry license is $1 per acre every year. The prospecting permit is 25 cents per year, but every year it increases by 10 cents per acre. The prospecting license follow a rental schedule that is focused towards the mineral grouping. So as you can see here, every year of the license, the fee increases and it's charged per group. The mining license for foreigners is $5 per acre. And for locals, those are Guyanese, is $3 per acre. The incentives for medium and large scale investments, for medium scale, you can apply for tax exemptions on machinery such as the ATV excavators, But for the large scale, you have a list of items that you can get duty-free exemptions, tax exemptions on. For contact information on applications or anything, any process for that land management is responsible for, you can contact the clerical unit, the verification unit, and the registering unit. Thank you. This brings me to the end of my presentation.
Thank you, Joanne, for the presentation. I'm sure that Terry-Ann especially may have a few questions. To preempt one of the questions that she did ask initially while we transition to the other speaker, because you may need time to gather it. For the different departments that you have mentioned that persons can contact by the numbers provided, is there any possibility that the emails for those departments could be shared for persons who may be contacting them outside of Guyana, who may find it more convenient to email them?
I'm not hearing you clearly, Ms. Primal. Sorry about that. Can you say that again?
Sure, no problem. Are you hearing me better now?
Mm.
Is everyone else hearing me clearly?
I'm not hearing you. I don't know why you're breaking up.
I'm hearing you clearly, Eureka.
I heard the person just now clearly.
No problem, Joanne. I will send
I'm
a
hearing you
message.
now, yes.
No, I was just saying that to preempt one of the questions that I received earlier, because you may need some time to gather it. The information that was shared with regards to the
You went down again,
contact.
Ms. Primus. Can you please put it in the chat so I can respond?
Sure. Yes, I can place it in the chat. So while, one second. Hi, Joanne, just letting you know that what I was saying is now in the chat. And it isn't for your immediate response. I'm just sharing it ahead, as that will be one of the questions that you may receive, but you will definitely need a bit of time to gather it. So that's why I shared it ahead. With that being said, we will transition over to speaker number 2. Just give me 1 second to share the screen, and do let me know when you're seeing it.
I can see it.
Thank you, Shari. So speaker number 2 this evening is Dr. Natasha Gaskin Peters, who is an economist by trade, but experienced with both micro and macro economics and business development. Dr. Gaskin Peters is the director of the Center for Local Business Development, who leads the team that works with local companies in Guyana to assist them in entering the oil and gas value chain. This entails conducting gap analysis, training, mentor programs to help local companies improve their competitiveness and capacity to work in the oil and gas sector and all other sectors. So I'll now hand over to Dr. Natasha Gaskin Peters and allow her to share screen.
Thank you very much, Eureka. Good evening, everyone. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for having me, Eureka, and your team, the rest of your team. So this evening, I'm going to be speaking to you on the Center for Local Business Development and the work that we have been doing in Guyana for almost 6 years now. The center is really a capacity building institution. We work with local Guyanese businesses to upskill them. We also work with international companies also in this upskilling process. So I'll take you through exactly some of our programs, how you can get involved, how you can get registered, and just kickstart that particular process. So the center is funded through the Greater Guyana Initiative. So our funding comes from ExxonMobil, Hess, and CNOOC. They are the Stabroek Block partners in Guyana. We are managed by DAI Global. DAI Global is an international company that does socioeconomic work across the globe. So we have projects across Africa, across Asia, and other parts of the globe. And so in Guyana in particular, we're working together with Exxon and their co-venturers to upskill local suppliers so that they can enter into the oil and gas value chain, but also upskill them in general for what has been happening in Guyana's economy. And so, as I said, we would have started, it's almost 6 years now. It's very hard to believe it's been that long, but lots of work, lots of engagement since 2017. It's important to note that the center would have opened prior to final investment decision of the first project in Guyana, the Lisa Phase 1. So really showing the operators commitment to local content and their commitment to upskilling local businesses in country. Our process of training is a bit of a three-prong approach in that we bring businesses, so we have a registration process. I'll speak to that towards the end in terms of how you get involved. But we bring businesses in through basic awareness. Then we move more into building their core business systems before we move into mentoring. In addition to those core services, we do offer a lot of networking opportunities for businesses where they're able to engage with the operator in the oil and gas industry, as well as some of the prime contractors. So really an edification process that is classroom based, as well as follow-up engagements and networking as it relates to the business arena. So how do we upskill and build the competitiveness of businesses? We primarily work with small and medium-sized businesses because they're the ones that really need the work to be put in order to win bids within the oil and gas industry as well as other sectors as well. So we work with all businesses. It's important to know that. So not only businesses that are interested in the oil and gas sector, but businesses that are interested in opportunities throughout any sector in Guyana, but primarily those small and medium-sized businesses. We have 3 basic awareness courses that we offer. So we have the offshore oil and gas. So again, companies are interested in the Guyanese offshore sector, what is happening, who are the operators in country, who are the prime contractors, what goods and services they're supplying. And then, of course, how are goods and services procured? So, what is an expression of interest, for example, an EOI? What is a request for information? What information is needed? And so these general awareness scores are very fundamental in building those skills. It's important to note that the center does not do procurement. And so our training is geared towards upskilling of those businesses. Of course, they have to compete to be able to win work. So there are no guarantees after the training. We also have a health and safety awareness course, as well as the gas to energy, because that particular project is going to be within the Region 3 area in Guyana. It's going to be a large project. And so, of course, awareness is key in terms of what opportunities lie there, who are the suppliers, how to get involved, how to get engaged. After we do the basic awareness with the businesses, then we build core business skills. Everything that we do at the center, of course, is built around analytics. So understanding the gaps that exist within the companies and then being able to fill those gaps. And we found that for several of the small and medium-sized businesses, there are gap areas, especially as it relates to supply chain management, financial management, and human resource management. So these are the three core business courses that we offer. For the financial management, we do the theoretical component, which is budgeting, as well as we get into costing, because we found that a lot of the smaller businesses don't know how to accurately cost for particular projects. So what is your indirect cost? What are your direct costs? What are your overheads? So ensuring that they properly account for those costs. And of course, having good accounting systems in place. So this is why we would have started something that is a bit more practical and hands-on, and that's a QuickBooks training. So these are the core business courses. Unlike the general awareness, which lasts from about 3 to 6 hours, the business courses can take up to 4 to 6 months sometimes. So these are a bit longer in nature. And then there's the mentoring aspect. So once we would have done the basic awareness, build the fundamentals of the businesses, then we take them through a series of mentoring program. The core ones that we have are the health and safety management system mentorship program. And I'm going to walk you through this one in a few minutes because it's a very important one that we found was really lacking within the Guyanese society. So helping companies to build a health and safety culture has been really core to the center's operation in Guyana. And we've made significant progress with this particular course. Building off the awareness, we found that businesses really lack systems from our gap analysis. A lot of the local Guyanese businesses, they were not documenting, and I'm sure this is also very similar across the Caribbean region. So how do we assist businesses in their documentation and building systems? Because these systems are very, very important when it comes to the bidding process. So these prime contractors know you through your documentation. And these are very, very important. Quality management systems. So we have an ISO 9001 program where we've helped local companies to also build their quality management system, which goes hand in hand with their health and safety system. So both very important. Working in the oil and gas industry, but working in any industry across the Guyanese economy and across the Caribbean. So ensuring that we have these systems documented, but also that they are being implemented. And then there's the project management mentorship program. This would have started last year, so 2022, because we found that a lot of the businesses, Guyana's economy is growing so fast and there has been a vast amount of opportunities, but the businesses were having challenges as it relates to really managing each project and managing these different portfolio. And so this is why we built the project management mentoring program. Again, as a center, as I noted earlier, it's very important that we grow with the businesses And so as businesses grow, we change our program and we advance those programs to suit those needs. And the Accelerator program, this one is tailored to women-owned businesses and really focused around inclusive economic growth. We found that a lot of the female-owned businesses were operating outside of the oil and gas space, outside of the mining space. And so we wanted to ensure that we build their capacity, that we really reach some of the core gaps that they face. And so this is why we designed this program specifically for those women-owned business entities. So as I said before, the center is really focused on training not only for oil and gas, but for all businesses, primarily small and medium-sized businesses. So whether you're working in the oil and gas sector, in the mining sector, in the agriculture sector, the center has been supporting all businesses. Some of our other key work that we do, as I said, everything entails analytics. So it's important that we understand the competitiveness landscape that exists, how companies are growing. We have done studies in 2017, 2019, and 2022, really wide-ranging studies, cross-cutting sampling, very representative samples, across different strata within the Guyanese economy. And we found that Guyanese business have been growing at a very, very fast pace. And this, of course, can be attributed to a lot of the training and mentoring that they would have received through our entity. And so this really bodes well for them. And we will continue to conduct these gap analysis to understand how these businesses are changing, because again, as they change, the programs need to change and to really grow a pace of the businesses and this exponential growth that we have been seeing in country. We do a lot of supplier engagements, as I said, in addition to sitting in the classroom and going through practical exercise. It's very important that businesses network with larger companies within the oil and gas space, within mining space, within other sectors. And so the engagements, the events that we conduct are very important. We have community business talks, for example, where we engage local businesses on different different topics that may be challenging for them. So they're able to speak to those prime contractors, speak to the operator, and have those questions answered. So as I said, I wanted to go into the HSSC mentorship program because I believe that this is a program that would be of significant interest to your stakeholders. This program lasts just about 6 months. It's a mentoring program, so it does entail an awareness session. This session is usually done with the CEOs and managers of the companies because it's important that, of course, they give the buy-in because they have to provide the resources to the employees who will be part of this program. And so after conducting this awareness, once we have that buy-in, then we engage them in a follow-up meeting to understand their system. So what do you have in place? Do you have a health and safety policy? Do you have manuals? What exactly is your system and what exists at the moment? Once we've done this, then we have them go through a series of short courses to continue to build their capacity. So them understanding the concepts such as job safety analysis, how to fill a JSA, how to identify hazards, and how to fill documents pertaining to hazard identification. And also we do a complete review of their manuals and other documents that they may have, providing feedback to them. Once the system is built and they begin implementation, then we administer a questionnaire prior to site visits. So if they pass the questionnaire, then we move on to site visits. It's important to note that we ensure that every company gets through the program. So if it is that after final completion of the site visit, there's still room for improvement, then we will issue you with a report in terms of the areas where you have to improve And then we would do a follow-up visit within a month or two, depending on your progress, so that we can gauge whether you've completed the program or not. So we continue to support businesses throughout this particular area. And again, it is a gap that we've seen in so many small businesses, medium-sized businesses in Guyana, that absence of health and safety culture, and hence that absence of documentation in the process and implementation. And so this program has really helped in that regard, in terms of changing, not only enabling the businesses to just be compliant, but going beyond that and really changing culture and changing the way they think and the way they do business. And this has boded very well for them during the procurement process, when they have to submit documents pertaining to health and safety, which is a basic requirement for a lot of the companies. And so your participants that will view this recording, I'm sure they will be wondering, how do I get registered? How do I take part in the training that the center has in Guyana? It's a simple process. They can go to centerguyana.com, our website, supplier registration portal, or they can visit us at clbdportal.com, get their business registered. Once you're registered, then you would be able to see the various training opportunities and make contact with the staff at the center to take advantage of those training opportunities. As well as seeing those training opportunities, you will also be able to view expression of interest, requests for information coming out of the oil and gas sector, but also other sectors as well, because we do have other vendors that have been advertising also a lot of their tenders. And so the portal has opened up beyond the oil and gas industry, and just advertising for procurement opportunities for those larger companies across Guyana. And so we do encourage you to get involved. It's how we can track your progress. It's how we can ensure that you're taking full advantage of our training programs as well. And so that's it in summary in terms of what we do. We have several communication channels that we put information out. As I said, we have our website, we have the portal, but we also we put information on Facebook. We have a Facebook page. We also have a LinkedIn page. So we do encourage everyone to just reach out to the center if you're interested in those training and mentoring opportunities. Thank you very much, and looking forward to the questions at the end.
Thank you for your presentation, Natasha. Can you, oh, you've already ended the share screen. So I will pop on the next speaker, which we will switch to immediately. Hi, Nicole, just checking to ensure that you're on the call and you're hearing me.
Yes, I'm on the call. I hope everyone joining can hear me as well.
Great. So Nicole Haynes is the head of employment unit at the local content secretariat. She has worked several years as an economist in petroleum management at the Ministry of Natural Resources. Ms. Haynes holds a master's degree in economics from the University of Bristol and is a recipient of the Chevening Scholarship in 2018. So that being said, I will hand you over to Ms. Haynes.
All right, good evening. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes, we can.
All right. So good evening, everyone. I see it's after 6:30, so good evening. I am, as introduced, Nicole Haynes from the Local Content Secretariat. My presentation today is just going to share a bit on who we are as a Secretariat, what legally establishes us, our role within, I guess, the petroleum sector, and how we can, what services we provide that may be of interest and benefit to you. So I will go ahead, moving along. So my presentation is going to be focused on 5 areas. It's going to be short and sweet. These 5 areas, we're going to first look at the Local Content Act, what it is, and what are some of the areas it looks at. Local Content Secretariat and its function, who we are and what we do, why register at the Secretariat, what is the registration process, and how you can get in contact with us and how you can kickstart your registration. All right. So moving on. So the Local Content Act number 18 of 2021 is our current binding act. It was enacted in December 31st, 2021. So it's just about a year. It has been out. So the act essentially has the function to provide for implementation of certain local content obligations, that these obligations are set upon persons that engage within the sector, the petroleum sector, either in petroleum operation or any sort of related activities. So these persons may include our contractors, subcontractors, and licensees. Some of these people that the Act provides obligation to are the ministry itself and the Secretariat, and also to Guyanese nationals and Guyanese companies operating within the sector, and anyone else who may play a part in some way, directly or indirectly, along the supply chain. All right. So the Act itself, some of the obligations it outlines, let me minimize here. Some of the objectives the Act obligations outlined within the Act relate to minimum local content level. The Act outlines some specific targets for those operating within the sector that must be met in order to ensure that our local content goals are met. Reporting, the Act outlines how players within the sector shall plan and report on their local content activity. It handles registration and certification of Guyanese nationals and Guyanese companies to ensure that they are recognized as Guyanese and are offered or afforded the benefits that are outlined within the Act. We also have bid evaluation considerations. How is local content incorporated into the bid evaluation process of those that are offering procurement opportunities within the sector? It outlines advisory and collaborative mechanisms. It outlines some agencies, organizations that we as the Secretariat should liaise and collaborate with, because again, local content or even the petroleum operations extend beyond just oil and gas or extends beyond just petroleum. So it outlines those key agencies that we should collaborate with and we also seek advice from. And the Act also outlines offenses and penalties for those who may go against the obligations that are outlined within the Act. Okay. So moving on to the Secretariat itself. So the Secretariat is established through the Local Content Act of 2021. It's actually established under subsection 5, which outlines that a unit within the the Ministry of Natural Resources shall be established to help or to ensure that those provisions that are outlined within the act are implemented and monitored. So that is essentially why the Local Content Secretariat was established, and hence I am here as a representative presenting this to you. So the Secretariat functions as a focal point for monitoring and evaluation, coordination, and reporting of local content activities. So essentially, this is the reason why the local content secretariat exists. And what I'm going to do next is just go into a few of our functions. All right, so the functions of the secretariat. So the secretariat's mandate extends beyond just monitoring, but here's a few. I think I have a few more. Just a few of our main ones, but it's not limited to the 5 listed here. The Act details all of our functions and responsibilities. Firstly, the development of measures for the effective implementation of local content. So in addition to the Act, any sort of regulations, guidelines that may need to be developed subsequent to that to outline specifically how these obligations should be implemented. That is a function of the secretariat. Developing strategies that give preference to or ensure equal treatment of Guyanese nationals and Guyanese companies is also a function of the secretariat. The Act itself, within its mandate is to ensure that Guyanese are given fair and equal treatment, and where necessary are recognized outside of others to ensure that they're afforded some benefits within the sector. All right. The third, developing guidelines for local content reporting, procurement, bid evaluation, training, research development, etc. The secretariat has the function to develop these guidelines. It goes beyond those listed here. Currently, we do have a few that have already been drafted and are available. Publicly, anyone can access those. These guidelines govern, again, their contractors, subcontractors, licensee, and also provide considerations for those suppliers also operating within the sector as well, in some cases. Fourth, maintaining local content registered for qualified Guyanese nationals and Guyanese companies. This is where most of our discussion is going to be tonight, because I think as potential suppliers, as business and companies existing, this is where a lot of benefits or opportunities may lie. So I'll get into that a bit later. And then 5, measuring and reporting local content performance of the contractor and subcontractor. Right. Right, so from this section of the presentation, I'm just going to be answering 3 questions: why, how, and where. Why should one get registered with the secretariat? How can one get registered, and where you can find that information? All right, so why register with the local content secretariat? So the Act outlines the utilization of Guyanese businesses, Guyanese companies, for the supply of specific goods and services. So outlined within the Local Content Act, they are specific services within sectors and subsectors that have been identified that Guyanese have the capacity and therefore should provide to a specific percentage in terms of expenditure. So within some of those areas, maybe ground transportation, accommodation, services, rental of office space, food supply. It extends to 40 services. Those are outlined with varying percentages of Guyanese participation. In measuring the contractors and subcontractors' compliance with these targets, only companies that are actually registered with the secretariat can be counted and utilized. So first and foremost, why the registers exist is simply as not just to recognize and identify Guyanese that have the capacity, but to use as a measuring tool so that we know who is on the list is Guyanese, and therefore if you're utilized, we can count that, yes, this service is being provided or procured through a Guyanese business or individual. Yes, also because of this requirement, it's therefore in the best interest of our contractors and subcontractors to utilize companies that are registered with the secretariat. So you may find if you are reaching out for procurement opportunities through a contractor or subcontractor, they may require or request your local content registration number or your certificate, simply because through the Secretariat, in order to measure whether or not they are reaching those requirements, they must be able to show that these companies have that required certification to be counted as a certain percentage is being utilized by Guyanese. All right, in addition to that, suppliers that are registered with us receive live notification on procurement and training opportunities that are tailored to their particular area of expertise. So for example, if you provide trucking and you register and you have your registration is approved and you are recognized as a Guyanese company providing trucking, one, you're going to get notification on any sort of procurement that is coming in that relates to your service that you're providing, and also any training opportunities that are being offered by the Secretariat or by any other external organization that we see is relevant to you, you will get notifications on that as well. Also, registered suppliers will also be able to log into the portal to view any sort of opportunities in the sector that they have selected. And even you can even extend to see whatever other opportunities that exist in some of the sectors that you may be interested in getting involved in as well. During the registration process, the suppliers are asked to identify the services that they provide that may not be on the list, that 40 list of services that are earmarked for Guyanese, so that in future, when we're revising that list, we can therefore take that information into consideration. So for example, let's say you are, in addition to trucking, you provide, let's say, accommodations, and accommodations is not on the list. Still indicate that you provide that service. It will signal to us at the Secretariat that there are Guyanese that are out here providing accommodations. So the capacity does exist. And of course, with other mechanisms, we're gonna consider that and therefore add that into the list for the next round of services that are earmarked to an extent for Guyanese. All right, so we looked at why, and this is how. So we've pretty much stated the registration process in 6 simple steps. The first is that you gather your necessary documents. You go on to the Secretariat's website, specifically to the local content registers webpage, and you gather the necessary documents that it would indicate that you need. So for example, if you're a sole proprietor, there's a list of about, I think, 5 required documentations you need to walk with or get up. If you are a partnership, what are your necessary documents? If you, for example, own a company, right? So the necessary documents are outlined on the website. So you gather whatever necessary documents that are relevant to your business type. You then call or contact the Secretariat. You can either do that via email, you can do that via phone. And essentially what you have to do is book in an appointment for interview. So in addition to your documents, then what we do is we sit down with you, we review those preliminarily, review those documents. We have a discussion in terms of the nature of your business and so on to get a bit more context. And then following that interview, the Secretary is going to collect your documents and move on to the 4th step. We're going to begin that processing of your documents. So after you come in and you sit down, you have that interview, we take those documents in and we enter in what we call is your application account. What you're going to receive after that interview is an application ID. That ID is going to indicate, and it will be followed by an email that indicates that your application is being processed. And also, within that process, you would definitely need to provide an email. We will send follow-ups to any documents that are outstanding, any errors or inconsistency we find. So that will be relayed to you through that process or that channel. Then 5, internal reviews and verification. Not only reviewing to see that the documents are valid, ensure that the information is consistent, verifying that you are indeed a Guyanese or the requirements that are outlined to be a Guyanese. And then 6, your certificate and login credentials are then emailed to you, right? So you receive your certificate after you're approved. You receive a copy of your certificate via email. In addition to that, you get your login credentials so that you can log on to to, of course, track any sort of procurement opportunities that relate to your specific field or your area of expertise. All right. So this is just an example of what your certificate is going to look like. Basic information is provided here, but what is more important is this QR code at the bottom here. If, for example, you are tendering for the provision of a particular good or service, and you need to verify that you are Guyanese or you are registered on the local content register. A simple scan of this QR code will validate that indeed your certificate is valid and it's unique and it's specific to your business. So QR code scan, and it takes whoever is scanning it to the relevant information on your business, and it will say whether or not it is approved. This is its registration number, when it has been approved, what is your trading name, what is your business name. So it's also a mechanism to ensure that it's not duplicated in any way. All right. So this is just an idea of what your local content certificate would look like. And again, where, or finally the last question that we're answering, where. So for your interviews, for further information, you can definitely visit the local content secretariat at 116 to 117 Cohen Street. If you're calling to book your registration, and again, for any sort of book your interview and for further information, you contact us through these numbers, 592 in front, 225-8315 or 225-8318. In addition to that, we have our website, petroleum.gov.gy. This is for any information on petroleum management under the Ministry of Natural Resources. More specific, if you want information specific to local content, there's a local content tab there. You click, you have all your local content documents, all your local content information, any sort of publication, statistics, anything on local content, you can find it there. Specifically for the register, if you want to go on the register to see the companies that are registered, if you're looking for, let's say, for example, you are a contractor or subcontractor, and you're looking for Guyanese that are providing a particular service, you can go on to lcregister.petroleum.gov.gy, and you can find a register there of all approved and registered Guyanese nationals and Guyanese companies that are providing service. And then, of course, you have nre.gov.gy. It's the Ministry of Natural Resources General website. Also, you can find information there on petroleum management, local content, or any of the natural resources areas under the purview of the Ministry of Natural Resources. In terms of emailing for any queries or also for any sort of correspondence you will have after you've submitted your application, they will come from the email lcregistration@nre.gov.gy. Also, if you're maybe not able to access via phone, you can email us through that email as well. All right. And that brings me to the end of my presentation. Of course, I'll wait to the end for any sort of questions you may have. Thank you for having me tonight. Yes, and that's it for me.
Thank you, Nicole, for your presentation. And can you kindly end your screen share? There were a few questions that I had received in preparation for tonight's forum. So I've been sending them in the chat in preparation for the Q&A session at the end. So I've been sharing that information there. So just in case there's any question that you may need some time to verify information, double check information on. But while that is being done, I will transition to our final speaker for this evening's forum, Stephen Roberts. Stephen, I'm just checking to ensure that you're on the call and
Yes,
you're
I'm
ready.
ready.
Great. So our final speaker is Stephen Roberts. Mr. Roberts is a partner at Hughes Field and Stobie in the Corporate Services Division. He joined the firm in 2015 after previously working in the State Council of the Attorney General's Chamber and commercial practice at the leading chambers in Trinidad and Tobago. Stephen regularly advises international and local companies across multiple sectors, including oil and gas, mining, and insurance. He also leads the firm's practice in tax, banking, finance, mergers and acquisitions, and corporate and commercial law. His clients include Fortune 500 companies, international, regional, local financial institutions, and international organizations and multinational corporations. So we are happy to have you join us this evening, and we look forward to learning more from your presentation.
Thank you, Eureka, and good evening, everyone. So we've had quite a bit of information shared with us with the earlier presenters. And I'm mindful that it's 7:15 in Guyana, so I'll try my best not to be too lengthy, bearing in mind that we do have the question and answer segment coming shortly. I'm just going to share my screen. Could you just let me know if it's up?
Yes, it is.
Thank you. So we're briefly going to discuss what doing business in Guyana looks like from a legal standpoint. Now, being an attorney, I'm going to have to give a very brief disclaimer that this presentation is intended for this audience, the Delve Exchange, and shouldn't be shared with anyone unless we consent to do that. And this is not itself legal advice, so we strongly advise that you obtain independent legal advice prior to taking any of the steps that we are going to be discussing this evening. Now, in terms of establishing your presence in Guyana, there are one of two ways in which that can be done. Let's assume that you have a company incorporated or registered in a jurisdiction that is not Guyana. And for any period of time, be it a short project or a lengthy period of time, you have a contractual engagement in Guyana. It may be to your benefit to have your company that's established somewhere else be registered in Guyana. In such a case, what you'd be looking to do is register what we call an external company, where essentially you're registering a branch of your company that already exists. The alternative to this is to incorporate a company in Guyana under our Companies Act. And we're going to look at what those two processes involve. So before jumping into that, I think it's important for us to consider when registration is necessary. And there are really a few scenarios that trigger the requirement to register. One of them is where you enter into 2 or more contracts in Guyana. Another is where you transact business from a specific location for the purpose of whatever your business was established to do. If you have an agent in Guyana, which is pretty easily triggered, say for instance, you come on a business trip to Guyana, or you send your business development officer to Guyana to scout out opportunities, and that person is to enter into arrangements here, then that triggers the requirement to register. And then if you have a share transfer office, if you have your company listed in a phone book in Guyana, all of these things trigger the requirement to be registered. And as we discussed prior, you're either registering as an external, so a branch of the company that exists, or you're registering as a local company. Now, let's look at the two processes. For incorporation, there's no restriction on nationality of your shareholders. There's no restriction as to how your shares are distributed. You can do so in any manner that is convenient to whatever your business model is. We permit overseas shareholders virtual board meetings, and for the purposes of a company that's incorporated in Guyana under our Companies Act, its corporation taxes are assessed on its global income. So income, no matter where it's derived. Contrast that with a branch, which, as we said, is a registration of your existing entity. Similarly, there's no nationality restriction, but you are required to appoint an agent in Guyana who is empowered to receive legal process official notices on your behalf. And in addition to that, you're required to have an office in Guyana for the purposes of receiving those legal processes. You're taxed on your income derived in Guyana. And both of these processes take around the same time. It's about 10 to 14 days to register a company. It can be faster, but we tend to like to give the outer limit of what that timeline can look like. Now, from a document management perspective, what you're expect when you're registering a company in Guyana is, first of all, you want to know that the name that you want to use is available. So we file what's called a request for name search, and that typically has maybe 2 or 3 names in order of priority. And we file that document. It takes about 2 days to come back from the registry. And once filed, the registry will confirm whether the name you'd like to use is available. And if it is, it is registered, or rather reserved, for 1 year. After we've gotten back your request for name search, we can then prepare the company documents, which is your articles of incorporation, which essentially sets out any restrictions on the transfer of shares, the nature of the business that you're involved in, names of your officers, so your directors and secretary, your registered address. And then an attorney has to attest to a compliance document that states that the directors that you've chosen are qualified to act as directors. And when we're thinking about that, we're really concerned with whether or not the persons are of sound mind. And we're concerned to see that these are not persons who are bankrupt, since under Guyana law, liquidity is a precondition to being appointed as a director. The documents are also supported by a copy of your biodata page of your passport, if you're a non-Guyanese national, or your national identification card if you're Guyanese. And then over time, of course, you're required to make declarations as to beneficial ownership, that is to say, the natural person who exercises ultimate control over the company. The process for the registration of a company, so you have 2 days for the filing of the name search, and then around 7 days to get back your filed articles of incorporation and certificate of incorporation. The process for registering a branch is a little different. So remember, a branch already exists somewhere else. So what we require is a notarized copy of the documents establishing that company wherever it's first incorporated. If that is not in English, then we also require a notarized translation of those documents. There has to be a power of attorney that is registered in Guyana, appointing your process agent here. And under Guyana law, power of attorney has to be supported by 2 color copies of identification documents, which are notarized for both the person receiving the power and the person granting the power. Together with those documents, you're going to file a statutory declaration signed by 2 directors, confirming that the company does indeed exist and that the incorporation documents that you supply are true and correct. And an attorney similarly signs a declaration in connection with the filing of the external company. It takes about 3 days for the power of attorney to be registered, and then another 7 days or so for the external company to be registered. So that at a glance is what those 2 processes look like. Now, once you've registered your company, the next port of call is the Guyana Revenue Authority, and here you're going to be getting what we call a tax identification number. Now, for a company that is registered under Guyana law, at least 2 of the directors have to hold a TIN in order for the company to be registered. But if you only have 1 director, then the company can still be registered. For the branch registration for a tax identification number is supported by the documents that were used to register the branch. So at a glance, that's what the registration process for a company in Guyana looks like. Now, our friends at the Local Content Secretariat briefly spoke to us about what local content in Guyana involves. And that is the only restriction I think that one needs to bear in mind when you think of setting up a company in Guyana. Because if that company is listed in the first schedule to the Local Content Act, which has about 42 services included, which doesn't include mining, by the way, then those companies would have to be Guyanese, meaning they'd have to be 51% Guyanese owned, 75% Guyanese managed, and 90% Guyanese staffed. So that when you think about setting up a business or company in Guyana, that is something to bear in mind in terms of whether or not you need to have a specific type of ownership. I see a comment from Juan. Thank you for that. So separate and apart from that, if you are a non-Guyanese person or non-Guyanese company and you're looking to enter into the market here without necessarily going about registering yourself, then you can, of course, consider the joint venture type arrangement. And when you're looking to enter into a joint venture with a Guyanese company, there are a few things that, I think are important for us to consider. The first thing you want to do is you want to make sure that the company you're dealing with is empowered to actually conduct business in Guyana. It's compliant. So the easiest way to do that is to go to the company's registry or have someone go to the registry on your behalf and ask for what we call a certificate of good standing of the company that you're dealing with in Guyana. That document will show you that the company you're dealing with has been filing on a periodic basis its audited financial statements and annual returns. It also should mean that that company has also been filing its tax returns on a periodic basis, since the audited financial statement is what is used to support the annual return filing. So that's one. Second thing you want to look at is who are the officers of this company and are they empowered to act? In so doing, you'll be looking at, sorry, I'm noticing a question in the chat, which is around joint ventures. And the simple answer to the question, I believe it is whether in a joint venture scenario, Guyanese nationals hold a higher share of the company. To answer that, it really depends on the sector that you're involved in. So let's look at mining. In a scenario such as mining, where you're looking at a JV around the operations, the cost of operations. If your contribution to the JV is not the ownership of the particular license, but rather is expertise or some other format, then it really becomes a business decision for you as to what the Guyanese percentage or participation is. If on the other hand, your company is concerned in a sector like transportation to the oil and gas sector, which has to be 100% Guyanese owned, or rather sourced from Guyanese companies within the meaning of the Local Content Act, then in that scenario, in that joint venture type operation, a Guyanese person would hold the majority of it. But walking backwards to, the type of documents that you're looking at when you're thinking of a joint venture in Guyana, you're looking at the company documents to see that the person that you're speaking to is actually empowered to act on behalf of the company. You're looking at the tax compliance status of the company, since tax liens can be levied on persons for failure to to file their taxes, and that of course has implications for your intended operation in Guyana. And finally, you can do a general search to see whether there are any court actions or matters pending against the person or persons or company involved, since that also can have a spill-on effect on what you're doing. Now, the presentation that I've prepared for you is quite extensive and deals with a number of things, including HSSE, income tax, and so on. But I believe we can treat with all of that on another occasion, having regard to the time. So thank you. I'll hand back over to our moderator at this point.
Thank you so much for your presentation, Stephen. There were a few questions that were shared in the chat. At this time, we'll transition straight into the Q&A segment. I believe the first question that I saw was from Terian. So Mineral Mines is owned by Umila Ali. She is a Trinidadian national, just to add context to the questions that are being posed. The first question that she asked with regards to land acquisition for Quarian, sorry. And I see that has already been answered by Juan, who responded to say that 51% of the issued shares must be held by Guyanese. And Terian also had two questions for you, Stephen. Can you register your existing company name in Guyana as an external branch? So that is question one. And question two, I believe you had already responded to that during your presentation. But if you'd like to touch on it again, feel free to.
Sure. So thanks for the question. If you're registering a branch in Guyana, think of that branch as an extension of your existing company. So let's say, just for the purposes of this discussion, that you had a company called Paperclips Trinidad Inc. And Paperclips Trinidad Limited, sorry, because I think you all deal with limited companies. So let's say Paperclips Trinidad Limited wanted to register as a branch in Guyana. That branch would really be an extension of the existing company. So you'll be using the same name, the same officers. It's essentially the same company with an extension or branch in Guyana. That's quite different from if you were incorporating a company in Guyana, which is a company created under our Companies Act. Now, in such a scenario, what we'd need to do is first check to see whether the name Paperclips is available for the purposes of registering a company. And then you might want to change the extension to say Paperclips Guyana Inc., since we deal with incorporated companies here. And once the name is available, yes, you can use the name in Guyana. So just to recap, for branch, the name is the same. For a locally incorporated company, that really depends on availability of the name. And we've already spoken to, the joint venture scenario and where Guyanese must hold the majority or highest share in the company. So back over to you, Eureka.
Thank you for clarifying, Stephen. Before I move on to the other questions that were sent prior to this evening's session, do you have any other areas for clarification, Terian?
With respect to acquiring land and registering for land, we need to have a Guyanese national also. That documentation will have to be with the Trinidadian and the Guyanese national for application, and also for the mining license going forward. Would it have to be in like a joint venture for the application?
Okay, only Guyanese can hold quarry licenses. But I was saying, like I was saying earlier, if you want to be a part of a company and hold a quarry, you need to have a Guyanese national that holds 51% of the shares. So the majority shares held must be a Guyanese for the quarrying. For mining license, You can do it by yourself because the mining license is open to the non-nationals and nationals.
Hi, Tarian, just checking in to see if you require any further clarification before I move into the questions that were sent prior to the forum.
What I wanted to ask, if I'm putting an injection of 100% of the business, and we just need a Guyanese national to get the land and the license, do I still have to give 51% shares to the national?
I didn't get that, sorry.
If I'm investing 100%, let's say I'm coming over to Guyana to do quarrying, but I need to have land, I need to get the land acquisition, right? To allocate the land. So first thing you have to allocate the land, and secondly, you will have to apply for a license. Now, after
Right.
all that is done, right? The 51%, if I'm investing 100% in the business, I'm just getting a Guyanese to come in because I need a national to get into the country. Do I
Yeah.
have to give 50%, 51% shares of my company just to
Yeah,
acquire the land and the license?
Yeah, because that's according to our Mining Act. 51% is the beneficial. You have to have 51% shares issued to a Guyanese. That is what we are practicing all the time. So a foreigner can't hold a quarry license. So you would need to have a Guyanese national that has the majority shares in order to hold the quarry, even though you're investing the 100%.
Oh, I see.
Because we've had instances like that before. So we see persons just appointing a Guyanese shareholder, issuing the shares to them, the majority, so they can get access to the lands.
It's something to think about, Darian. In the meantime, I'll jump to some of the questions that were sent to us prior to today's forum. And if anyone else has any questions, they can feel free to raise their hands or post them in the chat. So one of the questions that we received will be going to the local content secretariat. One person asks for clarity with regards to the target utilization percentage to supply aggregates. The other two
Yes.
questions. Yes, sir.
Go ahead. Continue with
The other two questions that were sent, another person asked for the average process duration from the interview to when the certificate is issued. And lastly, one of our members reviewed the list of requirements, and it includes financial statement. So they wanted to know if that was an internally prepared financial statement or an audited financial statement, as it did not specify.
All right, so taking the first question, I'm assuming they're asking for clarity as to what the percentages are actually speaking to. So for anybody who is not following, within the Local Content Act, the first schedule of the act outlines, like I mentioned, 40 sectors and subsectors, or we call them services, that essentially contractors, subcontractors, and licensees should reach in utilization of Guyanese. So these sectors or subsectors are along the value chain within the petroleum sector. So for example, we may have, I'm just going through my list. I have it in front of me. So for example, we have rental of office space, we have surveying, we have waste management, storage, etc. And accompanying these services, there's a particular percentage that says 90%, 100% based on the service. What that percentage means is that for that contractor, subcontractor, their expenditure, a particular percentage must have gone to Guyanese or registered companies that are registered as a Guyanese national or Guyanese company. So for example, for rental of office space, it says 90%. It means that at the end of the reporting year, the calendar year, when a contractor or a subcontractor is reporting its utilization of or its expenditure on procurement, 90% of that value should have gone to Guyanese businesses or Guyanese companies or Guyanese nationals that are registered. Sorry about that. So I'll pause there just for like a few seconds if anybody needs any further clarification, and then I could go on to the other two. All right, okay. So the next question was on the average duration of the process from interview to issuance. Okay. To be very honest, it varies because what that time is contingent on is how valid the documents that are submitted are. How easy it is to verify that one, these documents are true, two, that these documents are representative of your Guyanese share or percentage of ownership, etc. If there is a case where, and then of course it needs to follow internal review, it must go through the different channels. So let's say in best case scenario, it's all done. Hello, can you guys hear me?
Yes, we're hearing you, not to worry.
Okay. So let's say the best case scenario that all is right and it's moving through the channels with no questions, no errors. It can be in a few days. But however, depending on how long it takes to verify those documents, any sort of queries that are coming from the sections that need to review the document, even also contacting the applicants in terms of getting more context to their information, because a lot of persons also that are applying are not, though they're Guyanese, they're not locally based, or they're not here physically. So in terms of getting in contact to get further information for further clarity, it allows or it creates a I guess an inconsistency within the application processing time. So I can't necessarily say how long it's going to take. It's by a case basis. The next, which is in setting up your company, you're required to submit your financial statements. So for context, this is under your requirements if you're submitting as a company. You need to submit your annual returns as were lodged or submitted to the commercial registry. And I think in addition to that submission, you need your associated financial statements audited. And it's what we're requiring is that it needs to be externally audited. So yeah. Any other questions regarding local content, the registration process, any other areas that local content deals with?
Thank you so much for the clarification, Nicole. Those were all of the questions in which I had received in that area. I think the other question in which I received was specifically for Sorry, I think my mic auto muted for a second. The question that I received for GJMC was specifically on whether there's an available online portal to view available land specifically for quarries. And she did clarify that there is an online map that shows all granted properties. Same is updated every 3 weeks, and the link will be provided to Ms. Primus on Friday. So on Friday, I will share the link to access that map in the Delve Exchange WhatsApp group for the members to view it there. Thank you for responding to that in the chat, Juan. Scrolling down, because I believe there's a question here for Natasha from CLDB. Do you provide virtual or hybrid trainings, as some companies may not have local representatives yet that who may be able to attend the in-person trainings?
Yes, thank you, Eureka. We do both. I think since the advent of COVID, quite a lot of institutions have been conducting virtual sessions. And so as a center, we do virtual sessions as well as in person. Quite a lot of the trainings for 2023 have been in persons, but again, for a lot of the outlying regions outside of the Region 4 area or along the coastline. So when we go into more the interior hinterland regions, a lot of those folks require online training. And so we do provide both. So we're happy to, let's say, for example, companies within the Caribbean region, if it's a group of companies and they're interested in a particular course or program, then we're happy to do a virtual session.
Thank you for clarifying, Natasha. Those were all of the questions that I received. Does any other participant have any questions in which they would like to ask? Do know that we're nearing 8 o'clock. So feel free to ask your questions before we wrap up this evening session. And for Tegan, who well, they're now transitioning to working in Guyana. Do you have any questions that you'd like to ask as well? Sarianne, I think your mic is was on. Did you intend to ask a question?
No, that's fine. I'm fine.
Okay, great. And Tegan, do you have any questions before I wrap up this evening session?
No, I'm good, thank you. But this was very informative.
So with that being said, we've come to the end of the Guyana Forum. Joanne, Natasha, Nicole, Stephen, thank you all for spending the evening with us and for your very informative presentations. As I mentioned earlier, the forums are recorded and they will be uploaded to our YouTube channel and shared across our network in the 6 regions in which we currently operate. So thank you so much for your presentations, and do have a good evening. For the persons who are Guyanese, have a safe Republic celebration tomorrow. And the persons who are in Trinidad, thank you for recovering quickly after Carnival to join us this evening.